Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most important things, at least in recent cinema, the twist. And I'm here to talk about that with a good buddy of mine, Cole from Dorkside TV. Thank you so much for being here, Cole.
Thanks for having me. Totally love talking about a movie twist.
Yeah, and so also we're going to be spoiling stuff. So know that going in. You've been warned. So let's start off with 1960s Psycho. Right, you get the reveal halfway through the movie, big twist that the main character you're following, she gets killed, and now her sister is who the main character is. But then it turns out later they are in the basement, and mom's coming to kill the girl, and the guy grabs her, and it's actually Norman, and he's wearing a wig, and it turns out he had mummified his mom, and like they turn the body around, and like she's like in a chair, and she's like a mummy with like no eyes and everything. It definitely was a big surprise back in the day.
The rare double twist halfway
Yeah.
through the movie, and then at the very end. Since this is the twist that kind of starts the twist genre, is what I'll even say.
Mm.
The word of mouth of this movie exploded. I would be willing to put it on the A tier. So this movie has been out for 63 years. So that is an incredible amount of time to have a movie stay super relevant and be probably the most talked about classic horror movie of all time. And it's because of that big twist.
Planet of the Apes, 1968 is going to be the next one for us. In this, an astronaut lands on another planet and is completely run by monkeys or apes, I guess. Will be nice. They don't have tails. Walk around and they've enslaved all these people, and he leads this like revolution. And then we find out that the Statue of Liberty is like buried in the sand. And oh my gosh, you maniacs! Yeah, blow it up. And it's Earth. It's just in the future.
Does it add to the rewatchability? I think that's a huge factor in a lot of these.
I don't think that they necessarily that there's anything that's actually added in going. I think like how you look at things for sure, but it's not like they've sprinkled in little like, oh, can you figure it out? Here's the breadcrumbs.
Okay. I'll give it probably a C. And the only reason I'm willing to give it a C is because I feel like this movie, even though it was pretty great for its time, I think what makes it stand out is I think that twist really shocked people when they first saw that, which maybe is what spawned all the Planet of the Apes franchise, I guess.
Yeah.
So for that, I feel like it does hold a little bit more weight.
Soylent Green came out in 1973. This movie's big twist is revealed that after this detective, also played by Charlton Heston, is following this government conspiracy, and he ends up finding out that this new food product that has been introduced that's like supposed to be the solution to like the food shortage and everything is actually made out of people. It's good because the end is similar to Planet of the Apes, where it's just Charlton Heston screaming, like the twist, which I appreciate. That's the kind of thing that gets people to go watch a movie. You got to see this movie, but I can't tell you why you have to see this movie.
Yeah. Word
That's
of
good.
mouth, man. Soylent Green hits a little harder for me because it is such a like revolting thing to find out. Like you're already in this dystopian world, to find out that you're eating people, that's how you're surviving. I feel like it was a huge twist in the movie
Mm-hmm.
that if you were watching it, it almost turns into a horror movie. I would be willing to put that on a C B tier.
Yeah, I'd be cool with a B tier for Soylent Green as people. It's one of those like finding out that you're eating people is just it's nasty. All right, well here's the big one if you're going to mention twists in your people like our age. 1980s, The Empire Strikes Back. Uh, Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father, endlessly parodied, but extremely impactful in the movie. Completely changes up like how you're feeling about the beginning, like in the first one and everything. I mean, I don't know if it completely lines up and it's one of those. I,
Yeah.
I love the idea that George Lucas is like, yeah, I had everything planned out. And I don't believe him for a second that he had
No.
everything planned out at all. I'm like, if you did, you'd messed up in some places. Like Luke should not have been macking on his sister.
Yeah.
And like,
The impact of Darth Vader being Luke's father is probably one of the biggest twists in cinema history, to the point where I think everybody knows that Darth Vader's Luke's father. Even if you don't know Star Wars, like you said, it's been endlessly parodied. So everyone knows Darth Vader's Luke's father. To find someone that doesn't know about that twist, you would have to find a place where Star Wars is not known.
Hmm.
I would say this is probably the S tier one if there was going to be one on S tier.
Yeah, no arguments here. S tier for sure. 1995, The Usual Suspects. This movie is double canceled by actors and directors, but man, it's got a great twist. Trust me. So the whole movie's told by this guy named Verbal Kint. It turns out he's been lying to the cops to like pin who the actual mastermind was behind everything, and it was really him. And he was just getting clues by like reading things around the room, like the company from like the bottom of the guy's mug and stuff, and like names on a calendar.
That this is probably one of the most well executed twist where when you do rewatch the movie you're like, "Oh,
Yes,
wow." I think everybody kind of knows the name Kaiser Sose because of the twist of this movie. Like even before I watched this, I had heard that through just osmosis.
yeah,
So I feel like this was one that lingered in the 90s of like you have to see The Usual Suspects. You'll never believe what happens in Kevin Spacey,
yeah.
he killed it. Say he went from the most least suspected person to totally evil when he I
Uh,
love that part because he just sells you at the end with that little speech. That's up there with probably an A tier or S tier to be
Ooh,
honest.
yeah. I can't think of a reason not to put it in S. I can't think of a reason to
True.
knock it down. I'm afraid of how many S's there. Like this is gonna be a very top heavy tier list. Also in 1995, look at this. We get some double Kevin Spacey action. Maybe not the best thing to be looking forward to.
The big twist of this movie, if I remember correctly, is that Kevin Spacey's character is targeting Brad Pitt's character to
Hmm.
be Wrath of the Seven Deadly Sins. He wants Brad Pitt's character to kill him, and to make him that emotional that he would be willing to do that, he kills Gwyneth Paltrow, his wife. This is like at the very end. You kind of know what's in the box. You feel for him. So I think the twist is more like Kevin Spacey and the lengths that he's willing to go to bring Brad Pitt down to his level.
That movie is messed up. The movie
Yeah.
is the twist in it isn't quite as strong, right? Or even like, it's like, is that the twist? Is the box the twist? So I don't know. What do you think on this
It's
one?
a complicated twist,
Yeah,
and I feel like the more complicated it is, the less impactful it is in a way, because then you're trying to figure things out,
yeah.
and it doesn't really change the watchability of the movie. So I would say probably a B tier.
Then we get to 1996, December of 1996. Scream opens up. Surprise is there's two killers, and they're both like the friends of Sydney Prescott. And not only that, the big twist is that they also killed her mom a year ago. All been like trying to get back at her. It works well in the end. Matthew Lillard is insane, and it's super fun to see
Yeah,
him at the end of this movie. It's not like, you know, the most revolutionary or groundbreaking. So I don't really feel like it needs to be necessarily that high. I think it does it well.
I haven't seen the Scream franchise. I plan on marathoning all the movies before Scream 6. And what I'll say about this twist that I know is I knew like 90% of what you just explained through osmosis and through Scary Movie, which I have seen.
Sure.
Um, I think the relevance of Scream and how important that twist kind of is, how it spawned this entire franchise where they basically do the same twist in every movie, from what I
Yeah,
understand.
pretty much.
So the fact that that gimmick has worked for 5 movies now, and this has also been parodied a crap ton.
Yeah.
So I would say this one, you know, C tier works for me.
That brings us to 1999. We get The Sixth Sense, the movie that had a twist so good, it spawned an entire career of twists.
Yeah.
So in The Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis plays like a child psychologist who's working with this kid who says he can see ghosts. And then at the end, it turns out Bruce Willis is also a ghost, and the only person who can see him is the kid. And then you go back and watch the movie, and you find out that there's not a single time anyone else talks to him, and you're like, "Holy cow!" I can't believe I didn't notice that.
This is, other than The Empire Strikes Back, this is probably one of the biggest twists in movies. I think if you are talking about twist that changes a movie, you can watch this movie multiple times and you'll probably pick up on a new thing that you didn't notice the first time or the second time you watched, where it's like, wow, nobody is interacting or acknowledging his existence. And when you watch it the first time, you don't even realize that that's happening because I don't know, it just has like the movie, like you trust the movie to give you all the information. So when you do get that at the end, what a twist. That's an S tier for me
Oh
personally.
yeah. Yeah, inarguably, I think S tier. It's just so well made. 1999 also brought us Fight Club. So a guy who doesn't really have a name in the movie meets this other guy named Tyler Durden, who is like, we got to be like manly men, and like punch me in the face. Like, and then so then they make a Fight Club, and Meatloaf's in the movie, and so I like that. Oh, then the ultimate spoiler: Meatloaf dies. Sorry, Meatloaf. It's very sad. But then it turns out they're like a terrorist organization, and they're gonna like blow up a bunch of buildings, like reset the credit and everything. But then the big twist is Tyler Durden is actually the same person as the narrator.
I really thought this twist was effective. When I first watched this movie, I didn't know of the twist. Just heard so many great things. I thought Tyler Durden was very cool, and I really thought like the dynamic between those two were really great. And when you're kind of like trying to put all these things together, you don't see it coming until the very end. And the way that he solves the problem also is super climactic for me, where he like shoots himself in the cheek, or
Yeah,
like it doesn't make sense technically, but like mentally, I guess it worked for him.
yeah,
I'd put it at probably a C or B tier, maybe a C. It's not the greatest twist of all time. I think on a rewatch, it's fun to kind of pick up on all the cues. It doesn't ride or die off the movie. If he didn't have the alternate personality and Tyler Durden was just still a real person, I don't think he would change the outcome of the movie that much.
yeah. I'm fine with C.
American Psycho, released in the year 2000. We have Christian Bale and this executive world. He's got, all these weird, quirky. He feels like a psycho throughout the movie. He's got all these weird mental things that he's doing throughout the movie. He's like killing prostitutes, and you just think that he's just a crazy guy. But then you have Willem Dafoe's character who comes in as the detective that kind of lets you know that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that maybe we're not seeing from Christian Bale's perspective. We feel all his paranoia, but then at the very end, when he's like admitting all this, his lawyer's like laughing at him and like, "What are you talking about? You're so funny." And he's like, well, "What's going on?" And then you have to like rethink: did he actually do any of this, or was it all just in his head at the end of the day? The ambiguous twist of you get to kind of make your own interpretation, it can be powerful. It can also be kind of lazy.
Sure.
So it's like, I love this movie, and I like to believe that he did do the murders, but I know a lot of people that are like, "No, it was all in his head."
Well, there's definitely weird stuff that happens that could lead you to think that like maybe it didn't happen. Like put the cat in like the ATM machine and like
Yeah.
blowing up a car. Like, but but like yeah, it's there's definitely like it doesn't like start there. So you could say that he's slipped a little bit. Like
Yeah. I would be willing to put it a little bit lower, even though I absolutely love this movie. I,
sure,
C or D tier, solely because I would like to know if it was true or not.
yeah, I'm fine with letting it slip down to D tier, remembering that we're not. This is not a judgment on the quality of the movie. We're just talking twist. 2000 also brought us M. Night Shyamalan's follow-up to The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, which definitely got underrated at the time. It's my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Same.
Um, Bruce Willis plays this guy who meets up with Sam Jackson, who owns a comic book shop and loves comic books. And there had been this train accident. Bruce Willis was the only survivor. And Samuel L. Jackson's like, dude, you're like a superhero and you got to go out and fight crime. Like, in the turn, he's like, man, I've never got sick. And like calls his boss and he's like, if I ever got sick, and his boss is like, okay, I'll give you a raise because you never take any sick days. And he's like, what? And I'm like, how would you? You would not know. You'd never taken any sick days. I would have
Yeah, come
like,
on.
but then his kid gets into it and he's like, "You are a superhero, I believe." Uh, anyway, so ends up he is a superhero. That's not the twist though. The twist is that at the very end of the movie, because Bruce Willis also has this power, like if he touches people, he can like kind of see the messed up stuff that they're doing. And there's just a lot of messed up people in Philadelphia, is what
Yeah.
I've learned watching this movie. Um, but he touches Mr. Glass at the end of the movie, and it turns out that he had been staging all these big accidents to find like his opposite, because he has like brittle bone syndrome. So he's like, if I'm like this, there's got to be somebody that's completely opposite that can't get hurt. And so he's trying to find that person by just killing like thousands and thousands of people. And Bruce Willis is just like, oh my gosh. And then like they call the cops, and Samuel L. Jackson's just like, they call me Mr. Glass. And then the movie fades to black. And I'm like, that was brilliant. Best movie ever made.
Best synopsis of all time. I like finding out about Bruce Willis's powers more in this movie and like his character growth. The Mr. Glass stuff, when you start explaining that twist of like, yeah, I've killed thousands of people on the off chance that there's one person
Yeah.
that could survive the, even if you had denser bones, what how can you survive some of these crashes? Like he's actually superhuman while Mr. Glass has like a condition.
Yeah, like
So
an actual medical condition is like, there, are we supposed to like, this movie is kind of like maybe problematic a little bit in its treatment of people with brittle bone syndrome. Is like, you're evil, right? For as weak as you are, there are that many strong people too. Also, with his plan being like, the person who's strong is going to just be kind of around where I live.
I don't want to say that it's lazy. It just is very convenient at the end where like I guess the setup of Mr. Glass and his character is okay.
Oh, sure.
But at the end when you find out like I'm staging all these horrible things to happen, it's like I just don't know if I super believe that. I don't know,
Sure.
man. I this one's kind of low for me to be real. It feels mean putting it in the F tier,
Ooh,
but I'm down to put it in the D tier.
okay, I'll go D.
Yeah, I don't think
I
it's
couldn't
a
do F.
bad twist. No, no, no.
That would
Eh,
hurt.
so following that, we have Memento that released in 2001, one of Christopher Nolan's first movies. It is like a constant twist throughout this movie because it's kind of played in reverse. Guy Pearce, main character, doesn't have the ability to make new memories. He's constantly losing his memory like every couple of hours. So every single scene in this movie is new and different in some way, even though it can be the same environment and the same scene. And you don't really understand what's going on until the very end of the movie, where then you have to piece together everything that happened throughout, where he is the one that actually killed his wife. And the shenanigans that Guy Pearce gets into because of all this, where he's killed other people, he's having to deal, he's got like pins all over and tattoos all over his arm where he's trying to remember everything.
He's like in denial of it because like that's like Joey Pants, or I can't remember his full last name, but Joey Pants is like helping him out because he was like the cop that like was helping on the case, and he's like, so they track down the guy that like caused him to get hurt and like, get the brain stuff, and they do kill that guy, like the real one, and then like Joey Pants is like using him to like go and hunt down other criminals and like kill other people, which doesn't work out for him. To me, there's the big twist at the end, but like you were saying, it's kind of the twists and surprises, more like the surprises and the mystery throughout the whole movie that I tell people about. Like if I'm going to tell people about Memento, it's like it's kind of backwards. Like the whole movie is in reverse.
I would put it maybe at a C tier. I do think with since it has multiple twists, what this movie does really well is it keeps you guessing. Like
Oh, sure.
I don't think there's a way to figure this movie out on a first time watch where you're like, okay, I got it off the top of my head. You can't see this one coming unless you know something going into it. So for that, I would at least put it at the C tier.
2004 then takes us to Saw. So the whole movie, you're stuck with this doctor and this like photographer dude, uh, and they're in this one room and they're like trying to get out this whole time, and there's this dead body in the middle of the room that's like a gun in its hand. And at the end, very end of the movie, the doctor saws his leg off or his foot off, which is gross. And then like crawls out, and you're like, oh dang, that was crazy. There's no way this movie is gonna do anything else that crazy. And then all of a sudden, the dead guy in the middle of the room like gets up and like peels like the bloody like application like makeup thing off his head, and it's the bad guy who's been laying there the whole time, and it's just so good.
My thing about this movie that I think is really awesome is it makes you think that I think is Fritz or something is the main bad guy,
Yeah, the other guy.
who's like watching, and then the great twist that he's actually also forced to make them play these games.
Hmm.
So when you understand that Jigsaw has like these layers, it just pays off really well when he's been in the room the entire time. They even mention that he likes to watch his victims be in pain and go through these trials. So to understand at the very end that it's actually Jigsaw and he just closes the door on the guy, says
Yeah,
game over, dude, that is one of the best twists. And the fact that this spawns like a 10 movie franchise, I think this is up there.
I'd be happy with A. I'd be real happy with A tier for it. But if you
I think it's A tier. I think
okay,
it's A tier.
yeah,
Next, in 2006, we have The Prestige, another Christopher Nolan film on the list. I love this twist. I think this movie is amazing in general. You have like two competing magicians trying to be the best. And you have Hugh Jackman, who is trying his best to wow the world with his amazing trick. And he can't understand how Christian Bale is performing his trick.
yeah,
And the big twist of the movie is that Christian Bale is just using practical magic of a twin brother and switching throughout the magical scenes to then also have the I guess the double twist that
yep,
Hugh Jackman's character has actually created a machine that can duplicate anything, including people, and he is killing versions of himself in order to get this trick off is mind-boggling. When you watch it and you understand like the links of what's happening, it makes the movie a great for a rewatch. But my jaw
oh
was on
yeah.
the floor.
Well, then you got Michael Caine, like in the beginning of the movie, it's like he's just got a double. Like he says it
Yeah,
like in the beginning, like Hugh Jackman's like, I don't know how he does it, and Christian and Michael Caine's just like, he's got a double. It's like it's the only way. It's the only way you can do it. Yeah,
I personally would be willing to put this on S tier, but an argument can be made that it's an A tier.
I'll go S tier. Why not?
I
Let's do
love
it.
this movie, man.
Stop
Spe-
us.
Uh, yeah, come on, come on. You have to give this movie credit. If you don't know anything about this movie going into it, I dare you to watch this movie with someone that has never seen or heard of The Prestige and watch them try to guess what happens in this movie. I promise you, they will not be able to do it.
And now we're getting to a really fun one, 2007's The Mist. If you've never seen The Mist, it's based on a Stephen King short story. In it, mist comes down on this town, and there's monsters in the mist. Thomas Jane, the Punisher, he's there, and him and his kid and are like stuck in this grocery store with these people. And like always, when it's the end of the world stuff, like the people are the real problem and getting other people killed. And this one lady's like, it's the end of the world, the book of Revelation, and like all this stuff. I'm like, man, you're reading
Hate
a
her.
different Bible than I was looking at. I don't remember this part. But so like she's like you doing this stuff, but eventually they leave, they get in a car and they're just like driving. There's like them and two other people, right? I think, and they're driving in this car until they run out of gas. And then they're just in the mist, run out of gas, sitting there, and they're just like, well, we got this gun and we have enough bullets for everybody but one of us. Thomas Jane's like, I'm gonna bite the bullet by not biting the bullet on this one. And he pops everybody. And then he's like, okay, I'm gonna get out of the car and go get killed by the monsters. And he gets out of the car. And as soon as he gets out of the car, the mist blows away and the army comes in. And he's just like, it's up there like with Hereditary, like the two most well acted moments of grief that I've ever seen in a movie. Like he is destroyed. And even just hearing about it, it's one of those things you're like, I gotta take a shower after that. Like you
Yeah.
feel dirty.
I think the twist in this movie is so bleak and depressing, and that's what makes it so impactful
Yeah.
because in like literally 2 minutes ago, we thought he was doing the selfless sacrifice. We thought this was like the hero story. You don't have to kill yourself. I'll kill you. It's all good. To then 2 minutes later, the military rolls up. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine what that feeling would be like. I remember watching the movie, and like you said, the emotion that I was feeling was like, oh my God, if you just would have waited 2 minutes, 2 minutes, everything would have been fine. I think this is also an S tier. I
Sure.
think if you wanted to bump it to A tier for the pure sadness that it brings,
Oh, I mean, it's it's an effective twist. I don't think there's any reason we shouldn't put it in S tier.
so Orphan releases in 2009 and blows everyone's mind because this little girl that is adopted by this family, you find out, is actually a 30-plus-year-old killer who has a history of killing the families that adopt her. This is a twist I had no idea was coming because it is so unexpected, because it is a little girl playing the
Yeah.
act the character. So when you are watching this, there is not a thought in your mind that this is a grown person that just has a condition that makes them look like a small child. I think this is actually an amazing one for a horror movie. As the fact that they have a sequel that somehow still plays off of this that I have not seen, I want to watch it because I know the fact that they still play on the twist and it still works apparently is just a feat in itself. I would be willing to put this one A tier because I was not
Oh,
expecting
dude.
this one at all.
I would go A tier for this movie, in any ranking. Yeah, it's definitely a surprise, right? Because like the whole thing about the movie, like this marketing was like, "There's something wrong with Esther," so you're like, "Something's wrong with this kid. Like, is it a
Yeah.
demon babe? Is she like a monster or what is it?" And then that it's just like the most simple explanation that it could have been. It works, but it's also so ridiculous because like in the big scene where they're like revealing like, and she's like just a crazy lady, like she's like taking out a retainer of like her kid teeth, and then she's got like gross lady, like old lady she's not old, but she's like in her 30s or 40s or whatever, but and she's like got these ribbons that she's always got on that she like that hide her like scars from her shackles and everything, and like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's definitely an effective twist, and yeah, I'm fine with it being up in A. 2011 then gets us to Crazy Stupid Love, a romantic comedy, kind of like a drama-ish, like they're dealing with divorce and everything. Uh, but definitely a movie you don't see a big twist coming in, right? So Steve Carell is, his wife is leaving him. He's real bummed out about it. He's kind of schlubbed out. He's like kind of stopped trying. And then he meets Ryan Gosling at this bar, who's like, dude, you got no game. I'm gonna get you some game. And he's like, okay. And so then he starts, I'm gonna say pulling chicks, but that's not exactly what's going on. But like he starts to get more confident and everything. As that's going on, Ryan Gosling is in this relationship with Emma Stone. And we're just like, oh, that's nice that he's kind of settling down. They're like meeting in the middle and everything. But then it turns out that it's actually Steve Carell's daughter, who we have like almost seen like a bunch of times in the movie. And I didn't even realize like we hadn't actually met this other daughter or whatever.
This movie one is just super great. Like you said, you don't expect the twist. So when you're watching, you're not adding all these things up. It tripped me up. I love the dynamic of how it immediately changes everything. Where Steve Carell's like buddies with Ryan Gosling and immediately like turns into, what, you're trying to do
Yeah.
this with my daughter. I love how it flips everything on its head. I think the twist in this one, I would put it like a C or a B tier.
2012 is where we are next with Wreck It Ralph, one of my favorite movies ever. Big twist in this one. The whole movie, Ralph is trying to like just get some appreciation from people, right? So he's trying to go and win a medal, and everybody's accusing him of going turbo. And in the movie, what that means is like there was this one game that wasn't popular anymore. And so the main character from that game started to try to go and kind of take over other games. And he got games unplugged, which essentially like destroys entire worlds and like potentially kills people, right? And so he's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'll go right back and everything. And then it turns out what happens is the the kart racing game that he's in, where he's met Vanellope von Sweets, who they're like, she's a glitch. She's like, we shouldn't keep around. She's bad. We don't like her. It turns out that King Candy is actually Turbo, and it's the coolest because he gets eaten by a bug and turns into like the Gary Oldman spider monster from Lost in Space, and fights Ralph at the end, like on a volcano made out of Mentos. And I'm like, this movie is undeniably the greatest thing ever. And so I think that it works for a twist because we actually get to see the characters react to being all like, oh shoot, he's Turbo. For me, it really works. I don't know if like I need to put it like super high.
I think what works about King Candy's reveal to be evil is that he isn't necessarily evil throughout the entire movie. I guess you get kind of like little glimpses here and there where he's kind of giving Ralph some questionable advice, and it does have that like almost kaiju fight at the end that
It's so good.
you aren't expecting for this like very minuscule like King Candy of the Candy Kingdom. Like you wouldn't think he would turn to this giant bug monster. If you're a kid and you watch this movie, this is like the kids version of Sixth Sense, where you're just like,
Yeah,
what?
exactly.
So I would be willing to put it on the B tier though, just because I do think it is a well done twist, even for adults.
That brings us then to 2013's Frozen, another Disney movie. Anna and Elsa are sisters, and Anna wants to marry Hans, and her sister doesn't like that, makes her ice powers go crazy. The whole Arendelle is like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And so she goes up to the castle, and she gets struck by magic. They're like, oh no, only your true love can save you, Anna. And they're like, we got to get to Hans. And so they get down to Hans, and then Anna is there. She's like, Hans, you have to kiss me because you're my true love, and it will thaw my heart. And he's like, nobody loves you. And she's like, oh my gosh. And then he's like, and now you're gonna die, and then I'm gonna go kill your sister, and I'm gonna tell people we got married, and then I will be the king of Arendelle. And then you're like,
Dang.
oh no.
When I think of this movie's twist, it almost gives me like soap opera vibes
Sure.
of like the relationship twist of I don't love you. I'm just in it for this. So I do think this one it's not as impactful for me because like you said, it does kind of it gets resolved super quickly. It's like a very like in the moment twist.
The end of Frozen, you can definitely tell that originally they were like, Elsa's the bad guy, and then they wrote the song Let It Go, and they're like, uh-oh, this song is too powerful to
Yeah.
be a bad guy song. We have to make her the good guy. And so I think that's why it also kind of is like a twist out of nowhere, because it's like it was a twist to the people making the movie too. They were like, well, we need somebody to be the bad guy.
I think this one has to go a little bit lower. Like if you rewatch the movie, I don't think there's even any slight hint that he's a bad guy.
Like there are moments he could kill Elsa where like I feel like nobody would have been like, you shouldn't have done that, bro. Like she's about to like impale some guy on a bunch of ice, and then he's like stops somebody from shooting her even. And it's like you could have let that guy from Wesselton shoot Elsa, and then that would have been fine. And then you could have been like, well, she got killed by that guy. I tried to stop him, but
So because of that, I would be willing to put this a little lower, maybe a little D tier
I'd be fine
action.
with D tier.
Gone Girl, released in 2014, has one of my favorite twists where a man is framed for his wife's murder. All the clues lead to him. So throughout the movie, you're like, did he do it? Did he not do it? Like he does kind of seem like a sleazeball in some of these
And an idiot.
scenarios. Yeah, total dumbass. And then you cut to see that Amy is alive and that she's actually staged all these things to frame him because she caught him cheating after pretty much letting him play video games and just treat her like the worst. He's the worst husband of all
Yeah,
time,
he's
essentially.
awful.
Um, and so she leaves, sets a paper trail to blame him so that he gets the worst life of all time. But then she gets like robbed, and then she like goes to Neil Patrick Harris.
She just says things that wrecks her plans. Like she's not as smart as she thought she was and
Right,
everything. And
right.
yeah.
And then she kills Neil Patrick Harris, which was like a old stalker friend of hers that was always obsessed with her.
Mhm.
And then the big twist of the movie, because that happens midway through when she shows back up and wants to be with Ben Affleck again, to be like, surprise, I'm not dead. You didn't kill me. I can make us both out of this situation if you just go along with this. And Ben Affleck has to decide if he's willing to stay with his crazy wife.
She's pregnant now too. She's because she like unknowingly to him like had taken some samples that he were supposed to get sent off to some lab, right? And then like made herself pregnant. And she's like, by the way, like you can't leave because like what are you gonna look like? I
Mhm.
was thought I was dead, but now I've made it look like Neil Patrick Harris kidnapped me and I escaped, but now I'm pregnant with your baby. And so like, what are you gonna do? And it's just like she's like the most evil person.
She is.
It's crazy.
I love how sophisticated the twist is though. Like it's one of those like real life scenarios where if you were in either one of their shoes, you could see yourself being in the same predicament. Like if I'm Ben Affleck's character, I'm like, well, I guess I really couldn't leave because then, even though I mean he's in the wrong with the affair, but he didn't murder anybody. So
Sure.
like he would exit looking like a, but he wouldn't actually like be in any legal problems. Whereas Amy
No.
actually is the one that has everything to lose. It's such a good manipulative twist of like the character emotions and everything we felt throughout this movie. The weight of it is just so heavy. It that's one of the movies like you leave it feeling like bad, you know.
Yes, exactly.
I would be happy putting it on like A, B, or A tier.
I go A. I'm not it's getting heavy up there, but I don't care. I think it is effective and a good twist.
Arrival is one of the best twists in the past 100 years, in my opinion. In all of cinema, this movie, if you have not seen it, this is the only movie I'm going to tell you. If you haven't seen it, you do not want to know the spoilers. All you need to know is that this is one of the greatest twists in movies. So I'm about to tell you the spoilers right now. You've been warned. Amy Adams' character is tasked with learning the language of aliens that come to visit Earth. And while she is learning their language, she understands the way they perceive time versus how humans perceive time. So instead of seeing everything linear, she is able to see all her future memories and past memories simultaneously as if she is in every single moment at all times. It's kind of a weird way to process the memories, but the way that the movie shows you flashbacks of her daughter all throughout the movie, and we believe that she has had a daughter that has passed away, and that's kind of like the weight that she's carrying, and she doesn't even understand. You start to realize that she doesn't understand who this person is. She knows it's her daughter, but she doesn't know who she is. And then she starts pulling answers from the future. The more she learns the alien language, the more she sees and understands the future and can call on future memories to answer the questions that are happening now. And when you finally realize what's happening and that she's able to perceive all time in her life simultaneously, it blows the viewer's mind because then you realize all of the flashbacks are not just flashbacks, they're actually flash forwards, and that it answers the question, is it better to have loved and lost than never love at all? I think this is easily an S tier movie, even though it's getting pretty loaded up there too.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine one, the skill it takes to even come up with a story like this, but two, the twist of when you rewatch this movie, the weight that it carries, knowing that she is dealing with her future emotions in the present and still decides to go through the pain and loss in the future because it was worth it in the end. Super heavy.
Yeah. So I'm one of those people that should have stopped watching the video a little while ago. Uh, if you're saying S, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to like yank on that saying no. I put it up there. And you're right. We're getting top heavy, but it's also like movies that actually have really bad twists we don't know about because they're pretty bad movies
They're
and
stuck. Yeah.
like we don't remember them. So
I'll just Men in Black you so that you can watch this without
perfect.
knowing. Just
Perfect.
erase. So if you go over to my channel, you will know that Jordan Peele is very much loved over at the Dork Side. So Get Out is one of my favorite movies, and it has one of the best twists out of horror movies in general. I think that when you're looking at this movie from the perspective of what is going on. At the end of the movie, really, what it all comes down to is these white people are trying to take black people's bodies for the benefits of white people brain and black people body. Daniel Kaluuya's character Chris throughout this movie, he has all of the awkward vibes of walking into a room full of white people and just having that like weird feeling that everyone's watching him and that just things are happening. The cold open of this movie really sets the tone of like something eerie is happening that you don't really quite understand, where black people are going missing and then randomly are in weird scenarios. So once you kind of get all these breadcrumbs, you find out that the family's grandparents have put themselves into black people's bodies
Yeah,
and that they're trying to get Chris and his body and auction it off, and that his girlfriend isn't really his girlfriend. She is all a ploy to get him to the family. It's one of the most sadistic twists in any horror movie where I've never felt more hopeless for a main character. I truly thought he was donezo. It was going to be like
sure.
one where the main character is just gone and it's you
Yeah,
just leave feeling empty inside. I think this one, depending on how you like the twist, because some I know some people really love it. I know some people it didn't hit for them the same way, and I feel like that's more of a personal thing. I think
sure.
it's a tier for me. I love the twist of this movie. It's my favorite of the Jordan Peele films, and I wish I could rewatch this one without knowing, so I could just experience the dread that is Chris experiencing like the teacup for the first time and
Sure.
stuff.
I agree that the twist is definitely up there. I'm happy with A on that. The fact that like Bill Dauterive from King of the Hill is gonna be the guy who's in his body too. Like that's like a little extra bad, right? It makes it a little worse. I'm so glad that they went with an ending where you cheer instead of like just
Yeah,
being sad, because it could have been really easy to go that way. Then we get to 2017 Spider-Man Homecoming. I wouldn't really say I expect big twists out of the MCU, right? It's not something that they've laid the groundwork with. It's like there's going to be big reveals. But if there's any character, you're going to get some kind of like, you know, villain reveal of like how they're connected to the hero. I feel like Spider-Man's definitely the one to do it with because like he's always connected with the villains. And at first you don't think he's going to be with Vulture. Like there's no reason for you to think that that's going on. Vulture's just stealing stuff. Spider-Man's going to stop the guy who's stealing stuff, and that's how they're connected to each other. But then you get that moment where he opens the door when he's going to pick up his date for the dance, and there's the Vulture, and you're like, "Oh shoot!" And I remember being so surprised when it happened that like I was excited to take my wife to see it. I remember being stoked because like, oh man, she's gonna like freak out. And I took her to the movie and it gets that scene, and I'm watching her, and she doesn't react at all. And I asked her after the movie, I'm like, "Why weren't you surprised?" And she's like, "No, why would you be surprised? He was like holding that drawing earlier in the movie. He's like got a little kid." And so if it was made sense that it would be her. I was just so mad that she was like, "Yeah, I knew."
I didn't see this one coming. I remember being in the theater and I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, okay, Peter's going to pick up his prom date. No big deal. You know, the climax will be at the prom. I mean, hell,
Mhm.
it's called Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
So, homecoming dance, whatever. And boom, Vulture opens the door. And it's not just that he opens the door. It's the awkwardness of he drives them there. Like it's the sitting in the dread of Spider-Man knowing like I I my personal and my hero life is colliding in the worst possible way right now. And what I think really makes this a really great twist for me is one, you don't see it coming, but two, it actually has an impact on the Vulture and Spider-Man's character because Vulture does acknowledge you did save my daughter.
Mhm.
I do appreciate that. So like Vulture's not like just an evil villain.
Yeah.
Like it brought some depth to him that I think that twist actually added so much to his character because he doesn't kill Peter. He's like, "Don't mess with my family, and we're gonna be fine."
Yeah.
And Peter being like, "I can't. I have to. This is who I am. I can't just
Mhm.
let you do this." Like the weight of the twist is so good in that movie that I'm willing to throw it up high again.
Our tier list is gonna fall over.
If I had to, if someone was like forcing me to put it somewhere, I would say A or B tier, lowest B tier.
I think B is probably where we should put it because, but it's so good. But yeah, we can go B tier with it.
Last on the list, Parasite, which released in 2019. This is probably the twist that put me on the floor. When this movie came out, it was very hyped up. I didn't understand why everyone was talking about it. So I go into this movie thinking with the title Parasite that it was going to be like some monster movie or something
Sure,
because
yeah,
I'm a weird nerd like that. And was pleasantly surprised that I was wrong and that it's just one of the best twists ever put to screen where this family essentially this very poor family and that lives in the harshest situation folding pizza boxes for a living then figures out a way to basically leech onto this very wealthy family and take all of the jobs within the house and the way that they basically take all of the personal positions but don't tell the wealthy family that they're all related is so well done. But the twist is that when you find out the maid that they fired is coming back and is begging to be let back into the house, they're staying at the house while the wealthy family is gone, and there's just a lot of tension being built to then realize that they have been storing in the secret basement the maid's husband, right? And if this sounds complicated, it's because it is. Like
yeah,
I don't even know how to explain this without confusing you if you haven't seen this movie. Ah, this is a S tier.
yes,
This is a
yeah,
S tier twist, and the way that the family crumbles with the wealthy family and how it all explodes at the end is insane. And the
yeah.
fact it leads to multiple deaths, concussions, like there I would watch this movie over and over again, and every single time it'll have me on the edge of my seat.
Like, and it's not something you're expecting at all. Like to find out that like the maid was essentially doing what they are doing also, and that like they were all she was also like not a great employee and was like letting her husband was like living there. I mean, and it's just so bad because like you understand why these people are doing these things, where it's because like they they just don't have money, like, and they just are trying to survive, and like, and we've all been in situations like where there's a perk from a job that you have, right? And maybe you take advantage of the perk too much. You know, you maybe you grab a couple too many donuts or whatever that are left out on a table, you know, something like that. But so like we can sympathize with that. We can't. We're like, I wouldn't do what they're doing, but like I get it. And so then to think that you're understanding what's going on, it's like, oh, it's going to kind of play out like the family, like because like the rich family has some drama that's going on, and they're kind of getting mixed into it, and then it's just like out of nowhere, it feels like it's just like, holy cow, and then we got to deal with that, and the movie isn't afraid to deal with like the twist either. Like, end of the movie twists are fine, and they can be really good and really memorable, and if they're done well and play back into the rest of the movie, then you know it's worth it. But like a lot of times, just like we'll just throw a twist at the very end, we'll Planet of the Apes it, and it's just like, hey, there you go. Isn't that crazy that that happened? It's like, yeah, it's pretty crazy, but like it doesn't matter. Uh, this movie is like, we're gonna put this crazy twist that could have been at the very end of the movie, like with a good chunk of the movie left, and we're gonna live in it, and we're gonna try to fix it, and we're gonna try to solve this problem, and it's not gonna work out, and it's gonna be messy, and it's just so good because of all that. I'm yeah, S tier for sure. Well, there we have it. Our very top loaded, falling over, no foundation tier list talking about movie twists. Cole, thank you so much for being here on the channel. Uh, your channel, Dorkside TV, is fantastic, and people should be watching you and Dallas and Corey and your reactions to everything and your explanation videos. I like feel super honored to like have you on the channel because I'm a fan of your stuff, and so thanks so much for being here to talk with me about these movie twists.
I really appreciate you having me on for your legendary tier list. I remember watching through marathoning all of your tier lists. So I'm honored to be a part of this. And if you like this tier list and you want to see Seth in another tier list, he actually did a video on my channel of the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. And I think it's probably the best tier list we've made on the channel. So I really appreciate that the tier list expert is a part of that. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely come check out and hang out. We always like to talk movies, and I can't wait to hang out with Seth more and talk movies with him.
Awesome. Thanks again for that opportunity. That was a blast. And yeah, definitely go check out that one if you like any of the tier lists that I've ever covered too. So all right. So thanks so much for being here, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye.